All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Tuesday. Welcome back. Tuesday, it's August. It's the first day of August. Happy August. For some of my friends in the States, they already have kids going back to school, and that blows my mind because here in Canada, our kids go back, my region anyway, they go back after Labor Day. So they get another month at home. So if your kiddos are back to school today, I hope everyone has a really, really great day. And I really took some time this morning, extra time, just being thoughtful and being in meditation of what do I want going forward? What is ahead of me for this month? What are the things I have on my plate? What do I really want to do? So I took that little bit of reflective time this morning on the first day of a new month. So welcome to today's topic. Today's topic, this was inspired by a question from someone who's in my metabolic reset. And she had finished up her losing phase and she was going into maintenance phase. And she asked the very good question of, are things like honey or maple syrup a better source of sweetness? And I thought it was a great topic of conversation. So I answered that in our group coaching call. Everyone in the reset, we have a call every Wednesday at noon, and we check in, we answer those types of good questions so we all learn together, and I help keep everyone on track towards their goals. And it was such a great question. I was like, we need to talk about this here as well. So this is what spurred today's topic as we go through our summer mini series, right? Each Tuesday coming at you with a little nugget and a little mini masterclass essentially. So we're going to do it for sugars, and from the angle of that initial question was posed was, hey, I'm going to choose to sweeten something, right? I'm going to choose to sweeten something. Is something like honey better than sugar? What are my best options? Because the sugar, like, I got to try to keep this, to one or two like main points that make sense for everyone, so we can keep our time, down to 20-30 minutes. So obviously this is a big topic, but I want to highlight a couple key things. So I made up a couple slides just so you can see, it'll make more sense. And so just give me one sec to bring this up. Okay, so hopefully you can see my slide. So I'm going to answer this topic from what does the effect of sugar have on our body and the different sugar sources we have option to, whether you consider it a sugar source or a source of natural sweetness to garnish our foods or drinks or to accentuate things. So I'm mostly going to talk from the lens of glycemic index, because this is where things can get surprising. When we want to look for an absolute answer, is this good or this bad? Is this one better than this? In life, there's really no absolutes. We have to choose, what is the most important factor for me? What am I considering if I'm going to choose something to sweeten? Let's say you have a plain Greek yogurt with some berries, and maybe you want to add a little bit of sweetness to it. You have to choose what's most important for you, right? What's most important? What is it that you're being conscious of? What are that you are being mindful of? Because everyone watching this will have maybe a different goal. So as we go through, there's going to be like a lot of like numbers. Just sit back and take it from like, just observe, and you're probably going to be surprised at a few things I show you right up at the beginning. And I want that to be a little bit refreshing for you to just be like, yeah, sometimes we get caught up on things and we get caught up on arguing or focusing on one thing or the other. And it's just like, does it really matter? And then getting in touch with what is most important for me going forward. So I'm going to talk in terms of glycemic index. So the glycemic index is a scale of how does anything you eat, how does it affect your blood sugar? And the reason why I chose for that to be the focus of that is that we need stable blood sugar for hormone health, to minimize the stress in our body, for everything health. We want to minimize the effect of our blood sugar being raised. And so that's what we're talking about usually when we're talking about sugar. We'll talk about calories as well, right? So we could talk about it purely from a calorie point. We can talk about it from glycemic index. There's another factor called glycemic load, which I won't even get into because that's just going to make the conversation even more confusing. So glycemic index is a scale that basically goes from 0 to 100. So 0 is like zero effect on your blood sugar, zero effect. 100 would be what's the effect of pure glucose. If you put pure glucose in your body, that is 100. And so that every other food is basically ranked on the scale 0 to 100, right? So if it on the scale, it has a glycemic index of less than 55, it's considered to have a low glycemic index. So it's a lower effect on your blood sugar being raised. Medium, 56 to 69. High glycemic index is anything 70 or above. So on the first slide, I put two things to compare. So I put up honey and I put up table sugar. Now, you might be surprised to realize that table sugar has a glycemic index of 60. So it's technically not even high, right? Like it's in the medium range. And when we're choosing what we eat, obviously I'm going to encourage everyone to choose things lower on the glycemic index most of the time, but it's not even high. And when we compare that to honey, which a lot of people would consider, oh, well, honey's a better source. Honey's a better, if you're going to sweeten something, if you're going to put something in your tea, honey's going to be better. Again, like, what does better mean? So the glycemic index of honey is 58. So they're both in the median range. Like the difference between 58 and 60 really is negligible. A teaspoon of honey weighs about 21 grams. So again, even measure per measure, a tablespoon of honey, a tablespoon of sugar has a different volume. So that's why it's hard to even compare things. Like we're comparing apples to oranges a lot of the time. A tablespoon of honey has 17 grams of sugar, and a tablespoon of sugar, table sugar, has 13 grams of sugar. Like what? So if we're just measuring a tablespoon, why? There's like viscosity, there's a lot of different factors. So a tablespoon of honey technically has more grams of sugar than a tablespoon of white sugar. So when we think of like, oh, is honey better or not? Depends on your definition. And a tablespoon of honey has 64 calories. A tablespoon of sugar has white table sugar, 49 calories. So if we take a tablespoon of honey into our tea, thinking it's better than a tablespoon of sugar, is it? I don't know, right? Depends on your definition of better. Do we know there's great properties, especially if it's like a raw organic honey? Absolutely. Like honey, honey has really documented medicinal benefits, right? So there's benefits for honey. There's other things in the honey. Table sugar really has no other nutritive value. It's just a sugar source, really. There's really not a lot of other reasons to have plain white table sugar. Honey, there's other trace things. So what we look in terms of pure sugar content, calories, the effect of our overall blood sugar, honey in this case actually would provide more of a punch. Now, this can remind us to be mindful of our serving sizes. Maybe you're someone who loves a little bit of honey in your tea or coffee. Be mindful. I would say it's like, be mindful of how much you're using. Some people might put a full tablespoon in. I don't use a lot of it, right? But it's like, oh, be mindful of when you're putting it in now. If you use it, maybe I only need a teaspoon, right? Maybe a teaspoon would provide enough to sweeten this the way I like it, that I can enjoy it. And then the serving size then becomes the overall factor of how many calories. The glycemic index won't change, but the number of calories, the number of grams of sugar you're taking in absolutely will change. So let me know if that side-by-side comparison to honey and table sugar surprises you, because it did surprise me once I dove into it and I was pulling up things to make up these slides for everybody. Similarly, maple syrup. Maple syrup, natural, right? So we think, natural, less processed is better for us. Again, maple syrup straight from the tree. There's a lot of other like nutrients in it. There's like trace minerals in it. So there's reasons why we like it. And we've naturally, as humans, have gone to it over time, right? So us as humans, we go to these sugar sources because they can be, if we think of like, again, thousands of years ago where we didn't necessarily have access to fruit year round, we looked for sources like honey, like maple syrup, like dried fruits, like dates or raisins, things that we could dry and keep with us and have available when maybe fresh fruit wasn't available. But the reality is that we have sugar readily available to us like all the time. So why as humans we've gone to like looking for these sweet sources has been for survival over tens of thousands of years. So maple syrup, glycemic index 54. Again, a tablespoon is about 20 grams of weight, 12 grams of sugar, 52 calories. Dates. So a lot of times we will use dried dates in the recipes so that it's not seen as like a sugar. Like if you're making, if you have my hormone balancing snack guide, like there's a recipe in there to make like little energy balls, like energy bites. And they use things like dates, right? Because it's the whole food. So in a whole food, we're getting fiber, we're getting minerals, we're getting lots of other things. And yes, it's a high source of sugar, which is why we use it in a lot of these recipes. You'll see it in a lot of what we call like naturally recipes that are naturally sugar-free. But what's the component of that date? So I broke it down to 3 dates because it kind of equaled serving size. So we kind of keep everything kind of similar. So 3 dried dates is about 21 grams, 13.6 grams of sugar, 60 calories, and a glycemic index of 70. So the dates are actually high on the glycemic index because they are so full of sugar. The glycemic index is a combination of how fast our body like digests it, breaks it down, metabolizes it, and absorbs it. So dates, very high glycemic index. So if I was choosing to have something with dates, again, beautiful, amazing, delicious, yummy food, I'm going to really limit my quantity on them, right? Dates are a great thing. And like a really, really delicious dessert is like dates with some like almond butter or hazelnut butter in it. If you have that date, which is just the date on its own with a glycemic index of 70, it's going to cause your blood sugar to spike pretty quickly and pretty rapidly. That's what that means. But if you pair it with almond butter, hazelnut butter, which is a source of fat, a little bit of protein, but essentially it's a source of fat, it's going to slow the absorption of sugar down. So it'll kind of mute that glycemic index, that hit to the blood sugar after that. So there's ways that we can enjoy these things, but you would keep your serving size very mindfully, right? You're usually not going to sit down and plow through like 10 dates with some nut butter, and you might, right? But we mind our serving size. So that's the difference in this slide comparing maple syrup, a liquid sweetener that we use in breakfasts, or we use it in recipes, or we add it to things to sweeten it up. Dates, we can eat it on its own. We can use it and mix it up and make other foods with it, which is super, super common. When you're looking for healthy foods that are naturally sugar-free, you'll often see dates as a recipe. So does it make it better or worse? I don't know, right? It depends on your definition, depends on what you're looking for. So just overall, be mindful of the effect on your blood sugar, the overall amount of sugar we're taking in, and the overall effect that is important for you, okay? Agave nectar has a low glycemic index. So agave nectar is made from the agave cactus, a glycemic index of only 15. So you'll see, again, it's like when you go to like the natural, like these other sweetened products that we use to sweeten that aren't like table sugar, you'll see the labeling, right? They make it kind of pop out. They'll say what the benefit is to like draw you in to be like, oh, this is better, right? And it's like, is it better? I don't know. But the one interesting thing about agave is that the glycemic index is only 50. So very low effect on your blood sugar. So it still has 63 calories per serving, still has 14 grams of sugar, but the way it's metabolized seems to reduce like a big blood sugar spike for, for like if you're going to have white table sugar versus agave about the same amount of sugar, the agave is usually going to have a much lower spike to your blood sugar levels. So interesting comparison. I came across something recently where this is again, a doctor online, and he was saying agave is absolutely the worst, right? And again, he was picking out one singular component of agave, that it's mostly fructose. And so he was saying that because of that is absolutely the worst thing. And my message is with any of these is moderation, right? Moderation. Use them all sparingly, right? If you're going to use them at all, use them very sparingly. And that's pretty much with anything. You can take one component of it and be like, oh, this is the best thing. Or you can take another component and say that this is the worst thing. So use your discernment and gather the information and find what works for you, right? Coconut sugar. People go to coconut sugar. When we had this conversation in my group the other week, someone was just like, oh, coconut sugar. I bought coconut sugar because I had some friends who were visiting and one was diabetic. And I heard that coconut sugar was better if you're diabetic. So that's what I bought for them. So compared to table sugar, right? Remember, table sugar has a glycemic index of 60. So coconut sugar has a glycemic index ranging from 50 to 54. So it puts it on the low glycemic index. So that's why you'll see coconut sugar being advocated like, oh, it's better if you're diabetic. It's lower glycemic index. It will have a less of effect on your blood sugar level. And so it's technically low glycemic index, but it's not that different from table sugar. Still has 63 calories, still has 14 grams of sugar per tablespoon, but yes, on the glycemic index is lower. So yes, it will cause less of a blood sugar spike versus the same amount of white table sugar. It's still sugar, okay? Now we're gonna get into the basically like the non-caloric sweeteners. So these are the alternatives. So monk fruit extract, glycemic index is 0. There's 0 calories, there's 0 sugar in monk fruit extract. Monk fruit extract is available as, I see it a lot as powdered, like powder, so you can add it to things. They'll have like flavored drops. So if you're someone who puts something with a sugar source in your coffee in the morning, and if you want to explore doing something that's no sugar or no calories, there's a lot of little drops available or flavoring shots that are sweetened with monk fruit extract, right? So I've seen like, they have like French vanilla or like whatever, all the flavors, right? So it's like, oh, that's something that if you do put sugar in your coffee or you put honey in your coffee, and if you are wanting to keep your sugar content down, if that's a goal of you, I would explore looking into the monk fruit extract products, because there's lots of different flavoring ones. So you can add a little bit of sweetness to it, add a little bit of flavor if you like a flavor shot, that type of thing, and no calories, no effect on your blood sugar level. Stevia, glycemic index 0 calories. However, stevia has a bitter aftertaste. Some people describe it of like a chemical taste that they're sometimes left with in their mouth. So for that reason, some people just don't like stevia. And stevia is so, I think it's like, I don't know, I forget the scale, but it's like 1,000 times sweeter than sugar. So you need like the smallest little bit. And that's where it's like, it's very easy to overdo it. And it's like, whoa, what is happening there? So stevia has its limitations because of the bitter aftertaste. And if you've explored stevia and if you've tried it and you haven't tried, if you tried it, you didn't love it, I would suggest try something with the monk fruit extract, because again, 0 calories, 0 glycemic index. And most people are reporting that they like the flavor of the monk fruit better. Next, I want to talk about allulose. And what do I want to say about allulose? Allulose is gaining popularity online. And again, if you follow me, you're following probably other people in the natural health space. holistic health, looking for natural ways to eat healthy and live healthy. So allulose, there's a lot of influencers talking about it. I just watched a video with JJ Virgin last week. JJ Virgin is one of like the OG fitness instructors when like, you know, no one else was doing that type of thing, right? She's been in the industry for years and she's 60 years old and her arms are like ripped. So she was doing a video about allulose and the different alluloses. Dave Asprey's talking about it. So I looked it up because I didn't know that much about it, but from the things I read and learn, it was coming across. So I took that as my cue to dive into it a little bit more. So allulose has a glycemic index of 0, which is why people are going, oh, cool, here's this non-nutritive sweetener. So similar to, similar again to stevia, but again, a lot of people don't like stevia. So here's something that has glycemic index 0, 0 calories essentially, and doesn't seem to have like the negative taste as stevia. Allulose is naturally found in like raisins and figs and things like maple syrup. So it's naturally occurring, but if you go to the store and you get allulose, basically they've processed it, right? They haven't extracted it from raisins because it's in such small quantities. And so it's technically labeled right now a novel food, meaning we haven't used it at scale in humans to know if this is actually healthy or safety or appropriate for human use. For that reason, it is not yet approved in Canada. So that's kind of why I was just like, oh, okay, makes sense why I was just kind of hearing about it. So in the US, it's available. You can order it online. Lots of places you can buy it at stores. Not yet approved in Canada because Health Canada is taking the approach of, okay, here's a novel food. That's what it is. It's a novel food. We don't yet know enough to declare this safe for sale in Canada. Similarly with Europe, again, based on what I found, maybe like, again, these things can change rapidly. So Europe hadn't approved it yet either. The US, Japan, Australia, a bunch of other countries have not approved for use in Canada. I know most of you watching are in Canada. So allulose, I would say, I would just park that one for now, right? If you go to the States, if you have a source, if you're interested in trying it, cool. But just like with everything else, is mind your portion size. Like we're not going to, I don't want anyone going to these be like, oh, I can make ice creams at home. I can make cookies at home. I can make all the things because I have the sweetener that's going to make it delicious and it's no calories and it's not going to raise my blood sugar. So I can just eat all this sweet stuff. No, that's not what we want. So it's comparable sweetness to sugar where stevia is like way off the scale. Allulose is very similar. Again, I have not tried allulose myself, but the reports are very comparable in taste and texture. It's not metabolized by the body. So on the label, it technically has calories in it, but it's not metabolized by the body. Does not affect blood sugar or insulin. So you might start hearing more about allulose. That's a little bit of the lowdown on allulose. Yes, it's naturally found in different foods. We have not used it collectively in regular human use yet. And when there's anything like super new like that, some people we call like early adopters. Some people we call like, so we have the early adopters who are like all in. I'm usually more of like, let me just wait and see. So that's my personal stance right now with allulose is like, let me just wait and see. Now, mind you, if it was like in a product, like if I go to the States, I travel to the States for conferences and stuff fairly regularly. If I picked up a protein bar and there was allulose in it, yeah, I would eat it no problem, right? I'm also not going to be looking to include it into my everyday. Xylitol. Xylitol is a different category and it's called a sugar alcohol. And there's others in this category. I'll cover erythritol on the next slide. Xylitol is interesting is that it does have a glycemic index of 7. So super low, but it does have a glycemic index and it does have calories, but very, very low calorie compared to table sugar and even coconut sugar. So if someone was diabetic and was looking for something to sweeten something, and they're mindful of their blood sugar levels and the calories and the total number of sugar, xylitol is a popular alternative. And some of the reason for that is that it actually looks like sugar. It's like granulated. It doesn't really dissolve the same way, but you can use it pretty much equal volume. So if you were going to use a teaspoon of sugar in your coffee, you could use a teaspoon of xylitol and get about the same sweetness from it. Cool thing about xylitol, has great benefits for oral health, and I knew I'd forget to grab it. I have gum and mints upstairs with xylitol. So if you are a gum chewer or a mint person, or if you do like any type of candies, I'd recommend look into getting ones with xylitol. So there's a company called X-Pure. There's lots of others as well, but X-Pure has been around for a long time. And they make lozenges, mints, gums, mouthwashes. And we've had them in the pharmacies for years because we know xylitol helps with saliva production. It is great for oral health. It doesn't promote tooth decay like regular sugar. So the bacteria in our mouth can't break down the xylitol, and it's the bacteria in our mouth that breaks down sugar, like typical sugar, that causes cavities. So we know it is great for oral health. I make my own mouth rinses at home using xylitol and some other ingredients. I make my own little concoction, but I put xylitol in it specifically for the oral benefits effects. It helps break down, getting into like other topics as well. This is what I do. It helps break down biofilm, right? So I'll have people use xylitol if we have mouth issues, any type of mouth issues, sinus issues. I'll have people do sinus rinse with xylitol. So xylitol has a lot of interesting novel properties. You will find it if you go to any pharmacy, you'll see nasal sprays with xylitol in it now, and you've only seen that since COVID. Now, as a functional medicine practitioner, I've been recommending xylitol rinses for my clients since like 2015, and only really in the last couple of years has the more widely available use of xylitol been available. And it was still like, what, xylitol? It's like, yeah, some of these products, some of these compounds have other benefits. So we know it helps break down biofilm. It helps in the nasal cavities. It prevents viruses specifically from attaching to our sinus cavity. So that's why if you go to the pharmacy, you'll be able to find xylitol sprays. Off topic of the sugar component of it, but very interesting substance, right? So, good, bad. Do we want to be taking it all the time? There's different uses for it. Now, the one big drawback with xylitol is that some people will have some digestive upset stomach, gas, bloating, diarrhea can happen with xylitol. Usually it's higher doses. So again, mind how much you're using. Less is usually better. If you're going to switch and use xylitol for whatever, for baking or for putting it in something, start with a small dose and see how you tolerate it. A note that it is toxic to dogs. So dogs, it seems to accumulate in the liver. Dogs and humans have different metabolism. So dogs can't break the xylitol down. So if you have a dog, again, I'm laughing because my grandma used to have like a lab that like ate everything, right? So there's a lot of chocolate with xylitol, right? There's a lot of food products sweetened with xylitol, gum, mints. Like if you have a dog that's prone to getting into things and you don't want them getting into xylitol, make sure it's not accessible, or that might be a reason. Just like some people with cats, just like, well, I don't bring that plant into my house because that's toxic to cats. You might do the same with xylitol. But otherwise there's always xylitol in my house because of some of these other benefits. I don't use it on a regular basis for like sweetening anything. I don't really bake a lot anymore. There was a phase I did, but I don't, currently don't. But I use it more for like my mouthwashes and stuff like that. All right, the other sugar alcohol that I will mention is erythritol. And again, this is not exhaustive. There's others in this category, but erythritol, it's a sugar alcohol as well, but this one has a glycemic index of 0. So 0 calories, will not affect your blood sugar levels. So you'll see this in a lot of sugar-free products, sugar-free, diabetic-friendly products. You'll see this very widely available. And now when you read the labels on things, you'll be able to know what this is. So sugar alcohol, it tastes like sugar. GI upset, again, is possible with erythritol, but it's usually higher doses. So again, just mind your dose. If it's something you haven't had before, don't jump in and have the bucket full, right? Just have a little bit, be mindful of it. And then as I was researching to get the information for this little chat today, I came across some information. So I came across a study that showed artificial sweetener erythritol and cardiovascular event risk. So there's a study, very small, did like 8 patients, 8 subjects, and showing an increase of cardiovascular events with people who are consuming erythritol. Now, what I will say with that is that they were consuming, they said above threshold limits. So they didn't really say like what exactly the amount was, but basically they were giving people a lot of erythritol, more than probably what an average person would consume. So whether you are, you know what, I'm just going to stick with good old table sugar because that's what I do. I'm going to stick with things more in their whole form. The honey, the maple syrup, the dates. I'm going to stick with those because, you know, that's as nature intended. Or you're going to venture into using some of the no calorie or the very low glycemic index sweeteners that are available to us. With any of them, with anything in this group, is they're a garnish. They're like the sprinkle, right? Like they shouldn't be like the main focus of our day or our meal. They're there as an accentuation. They're there to really add that sweetness to our life, but be very, very mindful. Any of those, you don't want buckets full, right? You don't want buckets full of table sugar. You know, you don't necessarily want a bucket full of honey for if you're being mindful of your blood sugar levels. You don't want a bucket full of erythritol just because it has no calories and it is not going to affect your blood sugar level. Be mindful, right? Keep the focus on our whole foods first. And then we use these other things where appropriate in mindful quantities. So I covered a lot of information, a lot of like numbers and stuff today, which I don't always do, but I hope you found that helpful to see the actual numbers. And again, take that information, and with any information you're presented, you have to filter it through you, your experiences, your current situation, and what it is you want, right? Is it of utmost important for you that your blood sugar stays under control? All right, now you've got the information to then make choices that can support that. Are you someone who's like, I don't want these like overly processed things that I don't know, we haven't been using as humans for very long. I'm not going there. I'm going to stick with honey and maple syrup because that's what I know and that feels right for me. Cool. Right? There's no right or there's no wrong, but I want to give you like the real data so that you can make a decision that's going to be right for you. My wish is always that you keep blood sugar levels in check. Enjoy life, enjoy the food, learn the things that we're going to do to keep blood sugar levels in check. And I'm going to be talking more about that on August 22nd. So it's like, how can I have my sweetness? How can I have the things I want to keep my blood sugar levels stable? Next week on August the 8th, we are going to be going over morning routine, one of my favorite things to talk about. So as always, if you have questions after you've watched this video, thanks for sticking in and tuning in. I would love your good questions. Just put them into the comments and I will get back to you soon. And some of those good questions, I have a feeling will be used on the 22nd as we kind of continue this conversation on blood sugar, because it's so important for our overall health. Have a great day, everybody. Take care.